What if the Bible is hiding something far more disturbing than anyone ever told you? Not a metaphor, not a symbol, but something real. Because buried deep within ancient scripture, there are references to beings that should not exist. Beings that walked the earth long before recorded history. Beings that were not fully human and not fully divine. And if even part of this story is true, then everything we think we know about human history may be incomplete. But here's the part no one talks about. What if they didn't disappear? What if they were never meant to? And what if traces of them are still hidden in the stories we've been told for thousands of years? For thousands of years, one mysterious word has appeared in the Bible. A word mentioned only a few times, yet surrounded by questions that have never been fully answered. A word that has fascinated historians, theologians, researchers, and even skeptics, because no one agrees on what it truly means. That word is Nephilim. And the moment you start asking what it means, you realize something strange. The Bible never fully explains it. It only mentions it briefly, almost as if the reader was already supposed to understand. But we don't. And that's where the mystery begins. To understand this story, we need to go back, not just a few years, not just a few centuries, but thousands of years, to a time when humanity was still young, when civilization was just beginning to grow, when people were spreading across the earth, building families, forming communities, trying to understand the world around them. Everything seemed normal, until something changed. Genesis chapter 6 describes a moment that feels almost out of place in the rest of the Bible. A moment that raises more questions than answers. It tells us that the sons of God saw that human women were beautiful and took them as wives. That single line has been debated for centuries because everything depends on one question. Who were the sons of God? If they were human, then this is just a story about relationships. But if they were not, then this becomes something else entirely. Something far more unsettling. Some ancient traditions describe beings known as watchers, entities that were meant to observe humanity, to guide, to watch from a distance. But according to these accounts, they made a choice. They chose to come down. They chose to interact. They chose to interfere. And that decision changed everything, because they did not come empty-handed. They brought knowledge. Knowledge that humans were never meant to have. Weapons, techniques of war, ways to control, ways to dominate, ways to destroy. And once that knowledge spread, there was no going back. And then, something appeared that had never been seen before. Their offspring, not fully human, not fully divine, something in between. They were giants, but not just in size, in presence, in power, in influence. They were stronger than humans, faster, more aggressive, and according to some accounts, far more violent. Imagine living in a world where beings like that walked among you, where you were no longer the dominant species, where something else was stronger, bigger, and possibly out of control. At first, it may not have seemed dangerous, but slowly, things began to change. Small conflicts turned into violence. Violence turned into chaos, and chaos spread across the entire world. Communities collapsed, trust disappeared, and survival became everything. The world was no longer what it once was. It had become something darker. And then came something even more disturbing. Because these beings did not just exist. They influenced humanity. They taught things that were never meant to be known. Not just tools, but power. Not just knowledge, but control. And once humans learned these things, there was no turning back, because knowledge cannot be unlearned, and power cannot be easily taken away. And then came the flood. Not just rain, but destruction on a scale humanity had never seen. Water rising, higher and higher, covering everything, erasing everything. Or at least, that's what it seemed. Because what if it wasn't a complete reset? What if something survived? Because later in the Bible, we see something strange. Giants, again, different names, different regions, but the same description. Massive beings, walking among humans, as if something had continued, as if something had never truly disappeared. And then there is Goliath, a warrior so massive that no one dared to face him. His presence alone was enough to create fear. For 40 days, he challenged an entire army, and no one moved, until one person stepped forward. David, a shepherd, no armor, no sword, just a sling and a stone, and in a moment that would be remembered forever. The giant fell, but even that moment does not answer the real question. Where did he come from? Because stories of giants are not limited to one place. They appear across the world, in different cultures, different civilizations, different time periods, and yet they all describe something similar. Massive beings, walking among humans. Coincidence or memory? Memory of something that humanity has never fully forgotten. So now the question becomes not just who they were, but why their story appears everywhere. Were they real? Were they misunderstood? Or is this a part of history that was never meant to be fully revealed? Because the deeper you look, the more unsettling it becomes. And maybe that's the point. Some stories are not meant to give answers. They are meant to make us question everything. If this kind of mystery fascinates you, subscribe to the channel, because some of the most disturbing stories in history are the ones most people never hear. And the next one might change everything you think you know.